Good morning, everyone. We are glad you have joined us to learn more about giving through your IRA. My name is Kristen Meyer, and I'm the Executive Director of Advancement and Support of the College of Arts and Science. Thank you so much for your interest in being with us. One quick housekeeping item: you are welcome to ask questions or make comments throughout the presentation using the Ask Your Question button on your screen. Before we hear from Ann Morgan about the process, it is with great pleasure to welcome our Associate Dean of Research for the College of Arts and Science, Tim Glass, to share with you more information about one of the university's top priority projects that will impact research, faculty, students, and the state of Missouri and beyond. Tim, why don't you go ahead and take us away?
Thanks, Kristen. So I want to talk a little bit about, for a few minutes, about our new initiative on campus, the Center for Energy Innovation. If I got the next slide. We have a long collaboration, or a long history, a tradition of collaboration at MU. For example, very recently we opened a new building called Next Gen Precision Health, and the researchers in that building work with people from across campus, including our Molecular Imaging Diagnostic Center and our research reactor, to make new medical isotopes and develop them into drugs to treat hard to treat diseases. And these kinds of collaborations are really very important for making real progress in real life problems. And so we are really embracing the collaborative method to do that. And this is one example of how we have done it already here recently. And our next investment in collaborative research is going to be based around energy. So the next slide. I think everyone recognizes that there's a real crisis happening right now in our country and our world on energy. We're needing more and more energy of all kinds across our country, across our nation, and in the state. And we need to find sustainable ways of producing that energy long term as we grow as a nation. And so for example, Missouri only makes about 10% of the energy we consume. We import the rest from elsewhere, mostly in the form of coal. So at Mizzou, we're looking at developing new methods of producing energy, of making it more effective, more efficient, and sustainable. And so we have people on campus already doing this work. And the goal here is to bring them together, add more faculty, and really start making real progress on some of these big problems. Next slide. So we have a vision to bring together 3 colleges in this initiative. So Arts and Science, Engineering, and our College of Agriculture. Interestingly, the College of Agriculture brings biofuels into the mix. So that's an interesting addition for us. But the plan is to have a center which includes all 3 colleges, where we can have researchers from the 3 different colleges working together, whereas now they're really kind of working on their own. Next slide. So the goals for this center are, we are really hoping to make real breakthroughs in sustainability and performance and new novel ways of sustainable energy for Missouri and for the world in general. And the way we're going to do this is build a new facility. So we're going to build a brand new building on campus that will house researchers to really start making progress. And so the plan here, this is actually going to be kind of unique for Mizzou, from sort of a first-of-kind building, where we're only going to bring in researchers as part of teams who will work together. And so those teams will be from different parts of campus. We'll have teams from engineering, we'll have faculty from engineering, faculty from physics, faculty from chemistry, all coming to the same space. And the labs there will be open labs where students can work together seamlessly with their colleagues from across campus to really make progress on these big problems. And we think that this is the way we're going to solve a lot of the big problems, where we have people from different fields working seamlessly together. We're also expecting to add policy and economics faculty to this mix, because even if we make a great new sustainable energy method on campus, if the state level policies and legislation don't allow us to use them, then they're not really that helpful for anybody. And so we will have economists help us to look at the economics of what we develop. We'll have policy people help us to understand how we can get these implemented so that when we make new discoveries, they can actually be put into practice. Next slide. So the goals, more goals here, are to recruit new faculty to campus in chemistry, physics, economics, statistics, And this will strengthen our position as an AAU flagship institution. And we're really expecting this to grow the student enrollment when students see what they can learn in the research and facilities like this. And overall, all these faculty that we bring in and bring together will bring in an enormous amount of grant support, and that will spur a lot of economic impact in the state, mostly through hiring researchers to work on these problems. Next slide. So the facility itself, you can see on this graphic on the right, this is a artist rendering of what it will look like. So you can see this part of campus. The columns are at the bottom of the screen. The new facility is the wedge-shaped building sort of in the center. It'll be sort of north of Lafferty Hall, which is the engineering building, and sort of behind Switzler and geology. It'll be a 4-floor building, 180,000 square feet. It'll hold 62 faculty. More than half of them we expect to be new hires to the university. And when it's finally fitted out, it will have over 300 grad students, postdocs, undergraduate students working all on these grand challenges in energy. This is actually slated to be an entirely research building. There will not be classrooms in the building. It will be 100% research. The next slide. So just to give you a little sense of how we're thinking about it, we're kind of breaking down our expectations floor by floor. There are four floors. We're probably going to have a floor that is mostly dedicated to nuclear energy and nuclear engineered materials. We'll have a floor on hydrogen as a storage method and new renewables. There will be a floor on energy storage in general. So you have, like, the biggest problem, for example, with solar energy is when the sun goes down, you have no more solar power. So how do you store it for use overnight? Those kinds of problems. And then the fourth floor is really going to be interesting. It's a grid security and resilience floor where we're monitoring new ways, or developing new ways, to make power grids that are secure from, honestly, outside attack from foreign entities, and as well as being really resilient. So if you have a big storm that knocks out a power line somewhere, that it can very quickly reroute power so that everyone keeps their electricity on. And we all saw with the trouble that Texas had a couple of years ago, where one big ice storm really made a mess of their power grid. We're hoping to make advances that will prevent that from ever happening again. Next slide. So these are the kind of things we want to do in this building. These are our ideas now. Of course, we still have to build the building and bring people in. We are in the process now of raising money for this initiative. Obviously, we're looking to find people who can support the construction of the new building, because it'll be a big undertaking. But also, you can kind of see this initiative requires a lot of faculty, including new faculty. So any help with professorships or faculty support would be great. And finally, there's going to be a lot of students in this space. And so student support would be actually absolutely fantastic, as there's going to be a lot of students working in this area. So that's my quick introduction into the energy building, and I'll turn it back over to Kristen.
Us today. You mentioned we have 2 follow-up questions from the audience, and you had just talked about support for students. Can you talk to us just briefly about how the student experience will be affected through this initiative?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to be training a lot of graduate students in energy science in this building, and so it is the hot area to be in. Those students will have easy access to jobs once they leave. But this will also be a big, we think, a place where undergraduates will get some really excellent experience. One of the reasons that undergraduates want to come to a place like Mizzou is this is where the research is actually getting done. They get to be taught by real researchers on how real science is done. And this is going to be a big draw, we think, to the undergraduate population as well as the graduate population. So we're really excited about the student experience, being able to work on these real problems with people who are actually making a difference. It's kind of neat. It's not theory, it's actual real practice.
Yeah. That's awesome. I'm sure that the Missouri School of Journalism will claim that the Missouri Method was created there, and we will give that to them. But I think that that is one of the very unique pieces about the University of Missouri, is that units across campus embrace the Missouri Method. And instead of our students having to go off and find internships or real world experiences outside of our campus, they get to do it right here as they live and breathe and work on their studies. So Just one other question. What's your estimate of how many faculty members or people are working on energy research at Mizzou currently? And maybe just a little bit of a highlight of what you hope will be the draw to add to that population.
Oh yeah. So there are people who work on energy directly, and there are people who work on science, which is related. I'm going to guess we have between 40 and 50 faculty currently working at MU on things that are related to energy. We're hoping to probably double that almost with the hiring that this building will provide. And so we're going to have quite a few faculty whose work is either directly related to energy or in some ways affiliated with that. And we're hoping to really grow. This building's going to make a big impact in the amount of energy science we do on campus. It's really going to be exciting.
Well, I know we've been very thankful for the president's commitment of Mizzou Forward, and that's been a big player here to allow our units and our university to invest in a new facility like this, and making this a dedicated research initiative on our campus for our state and beyond. So thank you again so much for joining us today and for all of your insight. For our guests, of course, if you are interested in learning more about this initiative and continuing the conversation, my team and I would be happy to meet with you to discuss a little further. It is now with great pleasure that I welcome Ann Morgan to our call to share her extensive knowledge with you about how you can support this project, or maybe others you have interest in with a gift from your IRA. So, Ann?
Well, I am really excited to be a part of this today, and I am so excited hearing more and more about what's happening with the Center for Energy Innovation, because, oh my gosh, that is a game changer for our planet, isn't it? But we can't neglect how exciting IRAs can be. So we will just leap right into this. We're going to talk today about the basics of how an individual retirement account works, talking about qualified charitable distributions, because that's a really important way, an increasingly important way, actually, as more and more of our donors are recognizing the tax benefits of this. And of course, beneficiary designations and the advantages this has for you in your estate and retirement planning. So I'm just going to do a real quick overview of IRA so we all kind of have the same language as we're moving forward with this. So an IRA stands for Individual Retirement Account, and there's a number of different kinds of IRAs, but the main ones are traditionals, SEPs and simples, which actually are for people who are self-employed, and then Roth IRAs, which I think everyone's become more and more familiar with as time goes on. Now, a qualified charitable distribution, or a QCD, because we just love our acronyms, you can only use that for specific individual retirement accounts. You can use them for traditional accounts, SEPs and simples, but 401ks, 403bs, pension plans, those are not available. QCDs are not available for those kinds of accounts. Now, we're going to talk a lot about RMDs, or required minimum distributions. And a lot of people are very highly aware of when they need to start taking their RMDs, and we'll jump into that a little bit more later. Currently, RMDs start at age 73, and then in a few years it'll go up to 75. Now, just as an aside, most Roth IRAs don't have a required minimum distribution. They used to. That's changed recently, so you don't have to worry about those, but you do have to worry about those with traditional SEPs, simples, and other kinds of retirement accounts. And then, of course, beneficiaries. There are different kinds of beneficiaries of IRAs. So the income beneficiary is the person who's probably set up the account and is taking the income off of it while they're still alive. There's also a remainder beneficiary, and that's the person who would be receiving that after the person who started the account passes away. So we're kind of all on the same page with our little glossary here, and we're going to move into a little bit of a deep dive for required minimum distributions, because one of the big questions I get is, well, how do they even calculate them? Well, they get calculated once a year by a math problem. So this requires math. So we're going to need people from the mathematics department to help us with this. But you can go to irs.gov, and they actually have a calculator that you can kind of plug in and see what your required minimum distribution would be. But in short, what determines this number is the life expectancy on December 31st of that year and the value of the account. Now, the reason everyone gets really concerned about required minimum distributions and making sure that that's happening is that if the account owner fails to withdraw the full amount of the RMD by the due date, the amount not withdrawn is subject to a 50% excise tax. 50% is a lot. So yeah, people are really concerned. Now, the recent Secure Act 2.0 reduces this to 25%. That is for, let's see, that just kicked in, I want to say April 1st of this year. But the best thing about this is that if you accidentally don't withdraw enough, if you correct it within 2 years, instead of being 50% or 25%, it's only 10%, which is a much more reasonable penalty. So let's talk about how qualified charitable distributions even came into being, because they're actually a fairly recent invention. It's less than 20 years old. The Pension Protection Act in 2006 authorized these kinds of distributions, but only for 2 years. And then it would lapse, they'd reinstate it, they would lapse, they would reinstate it. And as I was a tax attorney during some of this time, we would literally wait on pins and needles in December to see, are they going to reinstate it? Now, of course, we knew that they were, but we can't guarantee that they were. And being lawyers, we're not going to guarantee anything until we see it written down. But finally, in late 2015, Congress permanently reinstated the QCD. So we can all breathe a sigh of relief. This is something that, 9 years after it was initially introduced, they finally made it permanent. We can all just count on it. Now, the very most recent thing that's very nice that happened is that in 2022, Congress authorized creating charitable gift annuities with qualified charitable distributions. And we're going to jump into that as well. So what are qualified charitable distributions? This is a very special provision for IRA account holders to make charitable gifts to qualified charities, but you have to do it in a very specific way. First of all, they have to go to a qualified charity. So a qualified charity is basically what we would sort of short-term call a 50% deduction organization. So private foundations, donor advised funds, there's a few other kinds of things that won't count for this. A lot of times we use 501c3 as a shorthand for a charity. Those are a kind of charity. 170B1A, those describe all kinds of charitable organizations that aren't necessarily 501c3s. For example, a state university is unlikely to be a 501c3, and the University of Missouri is not, in fact, a 501c3. But we are a 170B1A because we're a school. So that's kind of exciting. And you can take a charitable deduction for the University of Missouri the same way you would be able to do it for a 501c3. Now, there are a lot of rules around this. So currently the limit is $105,000 per person per year from your IRA can be a qualified charitable donation or distribution as a donation to a charity. The person doing this, the account holder, must be 70 and a half or older. Now, this gets confusing for people because at the time this was passed, the age for required minimum distributions was also 70 and a half. So people have that kind of tied together in their heads, but they're actually not related at all. So you can actually take advantage of qualified charitable distributions before you're required to take minimum distributions. So, that's a nice advantage as well. It has to go directly from the account to the charity. So you can't have the distribution made to yourself and then donate that, because having it distributed to yourself is a taxable event. Now, if you end up doing that, then you get a charitable deduction on the other side. But of course, you do have those tax ramifications. So one thing to remember when you're doing this is that it can take a while to transfer funds because it depends on your IRA administrator. So whether you have Fidelity, Merrill Lynch, Charles Schwab, whoever's administering your IRA, they all have a slightly different process. Some are very quick and efficient, and some might take a few days. So that's something to consider, especially at the end of the year, because there are some very strict rules around dates and gift dates when it comes to a QCD. It does get a special receipt because there's no tax deduction for QCDs. And the reason there's no tax deduction is that you don't get taxed on it in the first place. So you're taking from a traditional IRA, you might recall, your investments are increasing tax-free, and you get taxed on them when you pull money out as a distribution. With the case of a QCD, you're never paying tax on that. So the increase in value hasn't been taxed. And when you take it directly from the account and give it to the charity, that is not a taxable event either. You're not taxed on that. So there is no charitable deduction because it was never taxed. And of course, since 2023, the law was changed in 2022 for 2023 to create a life income gift. And of course, as with all charitable donations, no goods or services can be received in exchange. And that includes things like tickets, preferred seating arrangements, payments towards suites, anything like that you cannot use a QCD for. So what's great? So many things are great about QCDs. They can count towards your RMDs, so your required minimum distributions. It isn't taxed. It's great, especially for people who no longer itemize, because a lot of us, especially with the recent tax changes where they've upped our standard deduction, it greatly decreased the number of people who itemized. And if you don't itemize, you can't take advantage of charitable deductions. So in this way, you're able to make a charitable gift. You don't have to pay taxes on the distribution, and it counts towards your RMD. So it's a real win for people who no longer itemize. It also can keep your required minimum distributions from changing your tax rates because it's applied towards your RMDs and it's not taxed. It can be done before the donor even has RMDs, like we spoke of before. And as we kind of alluded to, it can be used to create a life income gift, a charitable gift annuity, a charitable remainder trust, or a charitable annuity trust up to $53,000. Now, so many advantages to this. One of the things that's exciting is that although it says once a lifetime right now, they're kind of testing the waters to see if people like this, to see what its true impact is on our economy, to see if it's affecting how much we have as far as the tax base goes. They're proving to be very popular because the best thing is, especially with the CGA, you donate that $53,000 and you receive an income for the rest of your life. And the payment is based completely on your age. So it makes it really easy. Some things to remember, of course, is you don't get a tax deduction like you would if you were setting up just a regular CGA. All income is treated as ordinary income. So you don't have those tax breaks. For example, if you donated stock, you would avoid some capital gain taxes and that sort of thing. You don't get that special tax treatment. But remember, this is money that has never been taxed at this point. And of course, the payout has to be greater than 5%. But those are some pretty easy rules to go by. So let's talk about required minimum distributions and charitable gift annuities. So we're throwing around a lot of acronyms here. So the Secure 2.0 provision in the 2022 Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2023, really, there's such long titles for these bills. As we said, allows a one-time $53,000 inflation-adjusted donation from an IRA to create a charitable gift annuity. So actually, the first year was $50,000, inflation adjusted, it's $53,000 this year. What is a charitable gift annuity? It's a contract between the charity and a donor where the donor donates money and the charity agrees to pay an income back to them for life. And the usual benefits include a tax deduction, some tax-free income. There's a lot of flexibility in the choice of annuitant, deferred payment options if you'd like, and the donor can assign some of the rights in the charitable contract. None of those usual benefits are available for this because of the fact it's coming from a traditional IRA or SEP or Simple, and it isn't taxed to begin with. And because of the way the government likes to arrange things, they want to make sure nobody else is getting a benefit from this. So it has to be for the donor themselves and their spouse is allowable, but nobody else. It does still apply for the RMD, and as a reminder, the payout must be over 5%. Now, the CGA rates right now were just raised back in January. And so if you're able to create a CGA with a QCD, with a qualified charitable distribution, your rate's actually going to be pretty strong. And please let us know if you're interested in finding out what your rate would be. So some key points for a qualified charitable distribution. They're tax neutral. They don't pay taxes, but there's no tax deduction. Now, it's called tax neutral because of that. However, by not having to pay taxes, it's a little bit better than neutral. So most people who don't itemize find this very popular thing to do. It must go directly to the charity from the IRA administrator. It counts toward your required minimum distributions. You must be 70 and a half years old. So just covering these key points. And every year, the limit is $105,000 limit per year per person. I have a question. Can the account owner withdraw more than the RMD? Okay, so assuming that you're talking about withdrawing for your own purposes, yes, absolutely, you can withdraw more than the required minimum distribution. And actually, for a qualified charitable distribution, you can also use more than the required minimum distribution. So that money is there for you to use. What it means by minimum is that's the very least amount you have to take out in order to avoid a penalty. So some other considerations in estate planning. With an IRA, when you leave that to a person that you're related to, perhaps your spouse or your child, there is, of course, the double taxation issue that can occur. It doesn't occur with your spouse because there's no estate tax between spouses, but there is the income tax issue. And of course, it does count as part of your estate when you pass away. So depending on how much you're able to shield from estate taxes, you could actually be looking at a double taxation system. So for people who are charitably inclined, this is a nicely, organized benefit to give to a charity because, of course, charities don't pay taxes, and you can leave different assets to your family members that don't have that same kind of tax treatment. It's really easy to do. It's a simple form to complete with your IRA administrator. And you just need the legal name, which is the curators of the University of Missouri, for example, and of course the tax ID number, which we can provide to you whenever you need it. It removes the asset from the estate for the estate tax purposes. You're avoiding income taxes and estate taxes. Some other issues being that a person who inherits an IRA must use it within 10 years. And just pointing out, it's subject to income taxes again, and charitable gifts are not subject to taxes. If you do gift something like this to the University of Missouri, we have to use the gift however you direct, whether that's for endowments, scholarships, capital projects, or anything else you would desire. And of course, I would be remiss from saying that there are benefits to including the College of Arts and Science in your plans. I didn't mention that. It removes the asset from the estate for estate tax purposes. I will keep repeating that so that people really drills home with people. We use it as you direct, and it also entitles you to enrollment in the MU Legacy Society and counts towards your inclusion in the Jefferson Club. So that concludes my presentation on IRAs. And so what I'm going to do now is bring Dr. Glass and Kristen back on screen so that we can answer your questions. Okay, and it looks like we might have lost Dr. Glass. So, Kristen, would you be able to answer? We have a question, where will the building be located? Do you happen to know?
I am able to answer that. It will be just north of Laffrey Hall to the west of the columns. For people who were on campus before, it used to be the Student Health Building, which was taken down over the summer as part of our building plan. And so it is replacing that property right there. Okay. It's kind of catty corner from the Geological Sciences building.
Okay. I don't see that we have any other questions, actually. So I think that just concludes our presentation. So.
Yeah. And if you could actually advance one more slide.
Absolutely.
I will make one more push. If anyone in the audience today is interested in continuing the conversation about the Center for Energy Innovation or other things happening in the College of Arts and Science or across campus, we have some contact information there for myself and my colleague Wayne Davenport. There's also more information to contact our planned giving team, Anne and her teammates, Arnaud and Jen. And we're just very excited for you to be here, for you to listen and learn more, and to be a partner with us as we work to achieve our mission for our state of Missouri and beyond. So thanks for having me, Anne.
Well, thank you. And thank Dr. Glass for your amazing work. And I'm really excited to see things as they start to get built. So
yeah, it's going to be exciting.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day, and MIZ.
ZOU.